Wade Wright. I am a student at Liberty University and I am studying for my Master's of Drug and Substance Abuse Counseling. This is my project on interpersonal communications. Next slide, please. Interpersonal communications. For this slideshow, I would like to do my introduction. I'm going to identify my overarching goal. I'm going to give you some information on my background. I'm going to define uh, potential barriers, potential conversation barriers, such as noise pollution, be they internal or external. I'm also going to share with you in my action plan. According to John Stewart, interpersonal communication is a type of communication that happens when people involved listen in a way that maximizes the presence of the person. Turn slide, please. This process involves four elements: the sender who sends the information, the receiver who receives the information, the message or the context of the information sent by the sender, and the feedback, which is the response from the information and from the receiver. Turn slide, please. My overarching goal, master goal, is to become an advocate for the homeless and work with marginalized Americans. Because this is my goal, I know that I need to be, in order to be a competent counselor, I need to use good communication skills and and increase my ability as a good listener. Please, next slide. On the Because of the population that I work with, um, which includes people who might suffer from substance abuse, might have a mental disorder, it is going to be imperative that I'm able to communicate effectively, and I will utilize many of the things I learned in these 8 weeks in this class. Next slide, please. Um, some of my background information I'd like to share with you is that I'm a 48-year-old African American. I am a mother of three. I come from a two-parent family. I am the oldest of 7 children. We are interdependent. We are an interdependent family. I come from a society or a community that is not in mainstream America. One of the life factors that may also impair my ability to become a good communicator is the fact that I had a terrible accident when I was 22 years old, which left me with a slight speech impediment. Next slide, please. Um, in this course, we studied we took an assessment for a behavioral blend. We took two assessments. We took one that talked about our behavioral blend, which is made up of four different types of behavioral blends, and we took one that assessed our ability to communicate effectively. I scored a 79 on the test that scored how effectively or how good of a communicator I am, and it said that I need to work on my listening skills. Next, next slide, please. I was identified as an ID, um, as an ID blend. ID blends are inspiring, influencing, directing, dominating, impressive, interactive, interested in people, demanding, determined, decisive, and doing. Next slide, please. Um, Whereas what I'm expected is I do. What's expected of me is I see. And I see includes inspirational, cautious, competent, calculating, compliant, and careful. And, and careful to be added to the eyes. Next slide, please. One of us, another factor that might deter me from being a good listener are internal and external noise pollution. By external noise pollution, I'm talking about loud noises, gum chewing, um, you can tapping, which is one of my behaviors, um, even communicating with someone who is hearing impaired is a part of external noise pollution. Now you may or may not be able to control these, but suggestions are like to go to a quieter place. Um, Also, another suggestion would be to paraphrase or restate what the person has said to you to ensure that you're getting the right message. Internal noise pollution consists of your biases, your egocentricity, or your ethnocentricity. I, and in order, do you have to consciously um, discard or disregard these? This is more of a conscious thing where you really have to reevaluate, or I will reevaluate um, throughout my throughout this experience as a counselor. I will constantly reevaluate my own biases. Next page, please. To enlarge my conversation is what we're working on. Trying to enlarge the conversation. In order to enlarge my conversation, I'll have to learn to utilize empathetic listening. I will have to avoid doing certain things like listening to rebut, um, rescuing in the trauma triangle. I would have to deal with my self-disclosure issues, and I would have to learn to avoid defensive behaviors or deal with people who have defensive behaviors. Next slide, please. Empathetic listening is identified by Stewart as an important skill set that involves three important skills. Um, One of them is focusing, then you must encourage, and you must be reflective. Next slide, please. Listening to rebut. This is something that I do often while I listen to people only to answer them. So while they're talking, I'm formulating what I'm going to say in my head. According to Stewart, Burley, and Allen, this is a behavior that I have to change in order to become an effective communicator. Self-disclosures. In this is really unusual because what I have to learn how to do is not to disclose as much as I would normally do, because while self-disclosing makes people comfortable and brings them in and builds trust, too much can take away from that trust. Next slide, please. Um, Rescuing. By rescuing by is explained by Burley, and what I have to learn to do is, instead of jumping in and solving the problem and giving my advice, it may be necessary to express my ideas in a non-judgmental, easy way instead of what is my habit. Next slide, please. I must enlarge my conversation, and in enlarging my conversation, I need to avoid defensive behaviors, or I need to learn to minimize and address defensive behaviors, because the population of people that I work with have many defensive behaviors, as they are just striving to get the basic needs met. And sometimes that can make you more aggressive. If you're hungry, you're aggressive. Um, so this is how I'm going to have to learn to deal with that. And in closing, I'd like to leave you with my plan of action. Um, and by incorporating what my instructors have taught me, watching the various films I've watched, and my classwork, I have been able to come up with a 4-point plan to um, my plan of action. One, I like to utilize the listening skills I have learned, including Dr. Peterson's, and I would like to include some of Dr. Peterson's game techniques in this. Two, I'm going to have to eliminate internal and external noise. I will eliminate internal noise by examining my motives, my biases, and beginning to listen to my clients without forming answers before they express themselves fully. Three, eliminate external noise pollution by changing the scene, the locale of the conversation when I can, by realizing who I'm speaking to, and by eliminating my own noise habits such as chewing or tapping. Um, Four, I would like to become more devout in my religious practices as I attempt to form a closer relationship with God. And through meditation, I believe in prayer, I will be able to maybe address my own speech impediment. And I believe that that's going to help me in being able to further my conversation skills, my listening skills especially. Thank you very much. Next slide. I appreciate you, and this is my last slide. It is the slide that has my references on it. Thank you very much. I appreciate you very much.